Hello, everybody. Seamus Murray is my name from Proviro Environmental Services, which consists of two companies, Proviro GM Limited, Grease Management Limited, and then our second company is GTMS Limited, which stands for Grease Management Services Limited, which is basically a service company for grease traps. We have been over 20 years in the business of providing grease trap solutions to all types of projects. So, so all types of projects. So basically, what I want to do today is just share some information with you on the understanding of the different types of grease traps that are available today. And at any stage, if there's any questions that you have, please capture the slide in question if it's a particular slide you have a question on, and email that to me, and I will answer you as best I can. And if there's a particular project that you need some help on at any stage, again, just email me some details, and I can just jump right in and start helping you with any questions. One thing that I have definitely come to the conclusion of is, and that is, no matter what question you ask me, there is no such thing as a stupid question. So just feel free to ask any question whatsoever. So anyway, jumping right into the slide presentation, understanding automatic grease recovery units and HydroMechanical grease traps. So basically, yeah, on this slide you can see my information. So what is F.O.G, fats, oils, and grease? Where does it come from? Well, everybody knows that it's basically any greasy effluent that's in the discharge coming from commercial kitchens. This is the different types of businesses that generate grease. So if you just have a look at this slide, and you know, with this slide, like I just want you to be aware of all the different types of businesses that should be having their effluent discharged pre-treated before it enters the city sewer. So yeah, pre-treatment is basically what you're doing with kitchen effluent before it enters the city sewer and the city's sewage treatment plant. So okay, so in the typical kitchen, here is a list as such of the different types of grease generators, and also the different types of solutions and the ways that they can be dealt with automatic grease traps. Over there by the pre-rinse sink on the left hand side of this picture, you'll see a central a point source grease recovery unit, which is basically treating the grease effluent at source. And then down in the basement we have a central unit, which is basically take effluent from many different corners of the kitchen. So this is the different types of grease generators listed. So the three compartment sink, the pot wash sink, the pre-rinse sink, the wok station, the exhaust hoods. Now, the exhaust hoods is generally something that you get a lot of in the US that have a washdown system in it. It's not really a huge thing over here, but in the off chance that you do come across it, the discharge from it needs to be trapped. Combi steam ovens. Combi steam ovens can be a big generator of grease. Certainly when they first came out they were, but in most catering colleges, the combi steam ovens, um, the kitchen staff are being trained to use solid gastronome trays when they're cooking meat in them, and when they do this, that seriously reduces the amount of fats, oils, and grease that would come from a combi steam oven. So I would always encourage you guys to instruct your clients that if they do have combi steam ovens, that they use solid gastronome trays when cooking meat in them. And if there are some chefs that would insist on using a perforated tray, then as a compromise, what they can do is put an empty solid gastronome tray down at the bottom of the oven. Rotisserie ovens, again, the majority of the types of rotisserie ovens that we get here in this part of the world, the grease coming from the chickens in the rotisserie oven would generally go into a tray, which in turn can be binned properly. But there are some rotisserie ovens that are actually connected to a drain, which in that case then it has to be seriously trapped, because that is just pure grease. And then in some situations with rotisserie ovens that are connected to drains, there's so much grease coming from them that you have to start introducing water into the grease trap, because there's just far too much grease coming from it. But again, any questions on these type of things, please come back to me by email, and I will help you guys out. Tilt kettles, invariably they drain into floor drains, which is in a lot of kitchens, and floor drains unfortunately have to be trapped by a grease trap underneath the kitchen. So if you can avoid floor drains altogether, that would be great. So 4 different types of pre-treatment systems. Okay, so the first one is the large precast concrete grease traps. As you can see, they are basically just large tanks with certain baffles in. Then we have the complete opposite. We have the small hand scooped type grease traps. These tend to be somewhere in the region of 200 litre total liquid volume, but they really fill up with grease very quickly and are very, very seldom maintained properly. And then there's the grease recovery unit, the GRU, or the automatic grease trap. And then finally we have the super capacity low volume passive type grease trap, although a TrapZilla that's in this is actually a HydroMechanical grease trap. Now I will come back to this HydroMechanical grease trap later on and explain that. But for now, basically a HydroMechanical grease trap, like an automatic grease trap, is basically a grease trap that's sized by its flow rate rather than the number of meals per day or the size of pipe that's feeding it. But anyway, like I said, I will revert back to that later on. So that's the different types of grease traps that are normally around. In this slide here, I'm basically just demonstrating your typical conventional grease trap. And at the very bottom of the tank, you can see sediment build up, or the sludge build up at the bottom of the tank. And then just at the top of the just below the inlet and outlet level there, you can see the static level of water in the grease trap, and then just below that static level you can see the grease layer or the grease mat. And so you have to be mindful that with the typical conventional grease trap, the sludge and the grease mat must never pass 25% of the total capacity of fats, oils and grease that's in the trap, because once it passes 25%, the efficiency of the of the conventional passive grease trap starts to degrade seriously. So really and truly, it's only capable of handling approximately 25% of its total liquid. Again, any questions, come back to me. Right, this is the small passive type grease trap. You can see up the top right hand corner there the photograph of this type of grease trap. It's a point source passive grease trap, and you can see it has a few different baffles inside it. The main baffle in this case is the one on the outlet side, and then there are other baffles inside just for dividing up the flow on that. But again, it fills up very, very quickly with grease. This is the inside of the automatic grease trap. As you can see, it has an internal strainer basket. Then it has a mechanical mechanism for removing the grease. In this particular case, it's a wheel that's controlled by a timer. Invariably, in this scenario, the timer would be set to operate in the middle of the night, somewhere in the region of 3 to 4 a.m. Normally, it would be the preferred time would be when the kitchen is not in use, basically, So when it comes on, it basically removes the trapped grease that's sitting on top of the invert levels of the grease trap, and it generally removes about 90% of what it has trapped, leaving the retention tank, the inside tank, ready for the next day's production when the kitchen staff come in. So that's basically that. Grease recovery units. Like I said, the most important thing is that the point source grease trap is the biggest area where the automatic grease traps. The sizing of the grease traps, the automatic grease traps, and that is all done on the flow rates. Yeah, so basically, some of these slides are going to be like this one, totally self-explanatory. So you just have a look at that, pause it and look at it. And again, any questions, just come back to me. Again, this is another self-explanatory slide, but it really is a huge misconception that as long as water is flowing through a grease trap, that everything is hunky-dory. Well, it really is not necessarily the case. When a grease trap is full, any type of grease trap, it continues to function normally, i.e. it's letting water in and straight out again. If the trap is full, the retention area is full, it will just let the fresh kitchen greasy effluent go straight down the drain. It really only becomes a problem when the downstream of the grease trap, the pipework gets blocked. Then the grease trap will start to overflow. Anyway, any questions, just come back to me. Properly sized with capacity, and that it's, again, this is reasonably self-explanatory, but in this slide here we're trying to demonstrate how the retention area in an automatic grease trap is constantly filling up, and then is also being automatically rejuvenated or brought back to an empty retention tank, or almost empty retention tank. So you can see down the bottom right hand side there where it's demonstrating that the grease mat is being constantly maintained. Again, all of the installation considerations have to be considered for the different types of systems in that. Again, self-explanatory. Automatic grease traps, the majority of which certainly are ones, the Big Dipper type, they have anti-siphon devices in there, so they are, but it is always worth your while as an engineer or a specifier to specify that the units have proper venting, and that in the event that a trap is not properly vented, it can cause what's known as siphoning. And when this occurs, basically the hydraulic event of the grease trap draining, the hydraulic pressure on the outlet pipe causes all of the water to, in some cases, all of the water to be literally sucked out of the grease trap. And sometimes this can be a major problem, as the grease trap ends up being empty, totally empty, which is not good, and it also sucks out the sludge and the grease as well. So regarding the maintenance, they're like automatic grease traps tend to be like spoiled children, in that they need 5 minutes attention every day and 10 minutes attention once a week. And if they don't get it, they tend to kick up blue murder. So it is really very important that the maintenance program is adhered to. The flow rates tend to be, with our units, with the Big Dipper units, tend to be from 1.26 litres per second to up to 3. That's the typical ones that are in commercial kitchens. We do have bigger ones, but again, come back to me if you have any questions on the bigger ones. This is a breakdown of the items that's inside a typical automatic grease trap. Again, you can see the strainer basket, you can see the wheel, and then there's a wiper blade on the wheel that wipes the grease off. It goes, the grease goes down a trough then and into the grease collector, and that is all controlled by the timer. In there, in that 24-hour timer, you can see that there is only 4 buttons pressed in, and each button represents approximately 15 minutes work, and that's the way it comes factory set from the factory. So basically they're recommending at least 1 hour a day to start with. In some cases, if it's a very low generating premises, that might need to be just cut down to one 15 minutes duty time. So again, so this is some different pictures of different installations. On the left hand side here, you can see an old passive type manual passive grease trap, where it's replaced by an automatic grease trap. These are just self-explanatory. Now, understanding kitchen flows. This is your typical fast food type restaurant, and with the fast food, you tend to have a 3-tub sink, which is 90+% of the kitchen's total fats, oils and grease, and then there's another breakdown on mop sink and floor drains, and that they tend not to have dishwashers. Okay, so typical full service restaurant, again, you have a pot wash sink, which is generally responsible for 75% of the kitchen's fats, oils and grease. Pre-rinse sink, which is 15%, dishwasher 4%, and so on there. But the most important thing that I want to get across to you here with this slide is that when you have a dishwasher and a pre-rinse sink, it is not necessary to have the dishwasher drain into the automatic grease trap if the dishes are pre-rinsed before they go into the dishwasher. And the main reason for that is that if you allow a dishwasher to drain into an automatic unit that, in the case of this slide here, is already trapping the effluent discharge from the pot wash sink and the pre-rinse sink, when that grease is sitting in there, if you then happen to have the dishwasher drain into that effluent from the dishwasher is going to come in at anywhere between 60 and 80 degrees Celsius. Plus it's got a very high detergent content. And when that comes in and mixes with the grease that's been trapped in the retention tank and it swirls around, it literally robs the grease that the grease trap has already trapped and takes that down the drain. So we know from our 20 plus years experience that you will actually trap more grease by allowing the dishwasher go directly to sewer. Now, Dublin City Council totally agree with this thinking, and therefore they instruct kitchens to follow this practice, in that when the dishes are pre-rinsed, to allow the dishwasher run directly to sewer. Because at the end of the day, the whole reason for putting in grease traps is to trap as much grease as possible. There is absolutely no scenario where every last bit of grease is going to be trapped. So that's why there's a limit of 100 milligrams per litre of fats, oils and grease that's allowed to go down the drain. This is the typical industrial kitchen. Again, you can see the breakdown of the grease generation and that. But this would be for the likes of a factory kitchen or something like that, that's producing a product to be distributed. The Achilles heel to any grease trap, no matter who manufactures, is food solids. And I would always encourage engineers and specifiers to specify as much trapping of food solids as possible. In this slide here, it's just one type of strainer. So again, it's just a system for trapping food solids. There's many out there on the market, but this is just one. So anyway, do your best to trap as much food solids as possible. And this is just a couple of photographs here showing different setups of food solids. Okay, so moving to the central units, i.e. The big dippers that go down in basements. Just one particular site in mind that comes to mind is Terminal 2 in Dublin Airport. It has 4 units like this that are underneath the food courts. Although all the food courts have their own grease trapping solutions, this is just something that the airport authority decided that they wanted to have in there as a backup to what was going on in the food courts. And yeah, like I said, they have 4 of them, 2 on air side and 2 on land side. When you put an automatic grease trap in a remote location, i.e. a location that's away from the kitchen, that's out of sight and out of mind, you need to have a system in place that can deal with any food solids that come down to it automatically, if possible, right? So in this particular case, we have a Big Dipper AST, which stands for Automatic Solids Transfer. So basically what happens with this unit is it traps the grease in the first chamber on the left hand side of the slide, and every 2 hours a timer activates and it opens up a solids transfer system, which basically sucks out the solids of the first chamber and takes it past the grease trap and directly down the drain. Yeah, so because you cannot depend on staff, no matter how much they promise you, it will not happen to come down and empty a strainer basket. They will not do it. When it's out of sight, it's totally out of mind. So again, any questions on this, come back to me. This is another central unit, and it has a solids trapping system in there. And again, when you put large units down in basements, it's really best that you put large 200 plus litre grease collectors onto the systems for the collected grease, because again, you cannot depend on staff to come down, kitchen staff to come down and empty the small 7 litre containers on a daily basis. There's just so many different scenarios where you can, or types of installations that you can build up. Alright, with this system here, it was not possible to put in a grease trap in the basement here, so with these tilt kettles here, we put in this trough system to drain into small automatic grease traps, and that's just what's happening here. Now this is the rotisserie oven that I mentioned earlier. This is one that does have a drain, because there's so much fat, kitchen fat or chicken fat coming from this rotisserie oven, that you can see here in the pictures that we've had to introduce a water flow into the grease trap, because there was more fats, oils and grease in this trap than there was water. And at the end of the day, a grease trap is a separator, and if it has nothing to separate from, then it'll just go straight through. So basically we had to maintain water in the grease trap, and that's basically what's going on here. The solenoid valve in this particular case was connected to the oven, and basically anytime the oven was turned on, the solenoid valve would open a water supply into the grease trap. Okay, so this is a lot of the international approvals that we have on our equipment. Self-explanatory. Sizing grease recovery units, basically, as I mentioned earlier, they are sized on the flow rates, not the meals per day or anything like that. So it's very important that you calculate the correct flow rate going into the unit in litres per second. And many local authorities will require you to submit a proposal specifying how you've come to your flow rate that you're predicting. That is the calculation that is required by many local authorities. So you can note it down and put it into an Excel spreadsheet if you wanted to calculate. But at the end of the day, you need to come up with an answer in litres per second. So that 0.49 litres per second, you then, you just add the different units to it and come out with your total flow rate. In this particular sink, you can see there it has the measurements on the left hand side. So if all else fails, just contact us, and number below or email. Okay, I'm going to move on to the TrapZilla, which is a super capacity, low volume, passive type grease trap. I say passive type in that it's a below ground grease trap. It is actually a HydroMechanical grease trap, and it's sized on flow rate as opposed to the old fashioned number of meals per day. So this is some of the different volumes or different models.
Thermoco's TrapZilla Grease Interceptor efficiently treats fats, oils, and grease from kitchen wastewater. Kitchen flows associated with grease often come in two forms, Low flow discharge from pre-rinse or unstopped sink, where flow rates rarely exceed 5 gallons per minute. And impounded flows, where sinks are filled and then dumped all at once, resulting in much higher flow rates. Low flow discharge is never a problem for grease interceptors, as fats, oils, and grease separate easily at these flow rates. Impounded water flows, despite their higher flow rates, are already stratified, with most of the grease floating on top of the water. With an impounded water source, once a flow event begins, the stratified contents of the sink begin to drain with the water leaving first. Any grease residue from the previous flow event enters TrapZilla and separates, floating up past the horizontal baffle and into the grease retention area. The free-floating grease is the last thing to leave the sink. It enters TrapZilla, floating up past the horizontal baffle and into the grease retention area, where it remains until the interceptor is pumped. The vertical baffle breaks the flow of water into the unit, disrupting its path and preventing water from jet streaming out of the unit. TrapZilla's horizontal baffle prevents this water from interacting with the grease mat, retaining all previously separated grease. As water and grease flow into the interceptor, the liquid level in the main tank rises. Once the liquid level rises sufficiently, clean water from the bottom of the tank exits the interceptor through the outlet pipe. As the incoming flow slows to a stop, a small grease residue is left in the inlet of the unit. Here it will stay until another flow event, and the cycle will repeat. TrapZilla's unique design allows it to hold large amounts of grease in a compact footprint, retain previously separated grease, efficiently separate new greasy kitchen effluent, regardless of flow type. The TrapZilla Grease Interceptor, a Thermoco technology.
This is the TrapZilla Model TZ600, and it has a capacity of holding approximately 600 pounds of grease, and that is a 270 kilos approximately of fats, oils and grease. It can hold 80 to 90% of its total liquid capacity in volume of fats, oils and grease, as opposed to the 25% that the conventional passive type grease trap can hold. So there's a huge saving there for the customer, in that when they're having this unit pumped out, they're pumping out mostly fats, oils and grease. Whereas, let's say for example, if it's a 1500 litre grease trap, as this unit here will, it basically can do the same job, if not a better job, than a 1500 litre conventional grease trap, with a very small footprint. As I have said before, it's very much like the tar dust, in that it is tiny on the outside but it's huge on the inside. The footprint this unit takes up is really very small, but yet it will actually trap more grease than a 1500 litre grease trap. And the total volume on this grease trap is 300 litres. So a 300 litre grease trap is going to do a better job than a conventional 1500 litre grease trap. Huge saving for customers on their pump outs, as they are now required to have the pump outs done on a regular basis, at very least every quarter, every 3 months. Okay, the self-explanatory slide again. This is the TrapZilla Solids Interceptor. Again, it's the very same size as the TZ600, but again, as I've said before, food solids is an Achilles heel to every type of grease trap that's out there. So whenever possible, you need to specify that the customer deals with the solids, the food solids. And that's basically what this is a food solids separator. And these are the approvals. Every passive grease trap or every below ground grease trap that goes in Ireland is supposed to have a CE mark on it. And not everyone does. Ours does. Okay, again another self-explanatory slide on performance. Dell Ireland. They contacted us as they had a problem with their conventional below ground 1500 litre steel in ground grease trap. The steel was rotten and it was causing the trap to leak into the ground around the grease trap, causing many problems. Basically, we went at the inside of it with an angle grinder, tore out all the old baffles and put in a TrapZilla TZ 600. The TrapZilla TZ 600 has a capacity of approximately 330 litres, and it will actually trap more grease than the 1500 litre grease trap that it is replacing. And Dell Ireland have been very happy with this installation. Again, in the picture on the left hand side, I just wanted to let you see the three different types of TrapZilla that is available. And on the left, from the left to right, on the left you've got the TZ 160. In the middle we have the TZ 400 and then the TZ 600. So very nice. Okay, basically with this slide it's self-explanatory. It's just the different types of installations suspended from the ceiling, on the floor of a basement, or outside and below ground. Okay, again with all these installations it's so important to make sure that the traps are vented properly and there's plenty of cleaning eyes and that put in. Okay, in this particular case the TrapZilla is it's going in as a backup to the automatic grease trap that's inside the kitchen. Again, in these slides here it's just some samples of our installations. With this slide here, when the TrapZilla was originally installed, it was not fitted with a vessel vent, and the staff in the laundry room here were complaining about odour coming from it. So again, I just need to emphasize the importance of venting properly, and if there's any queries at all, just contact me and I will talk to you through the different venting that's required. With again, you can see here we have solids interceptors in front of the TrapZillas. With these TrapZilla array, as I call them, you can put in as many as you like. You can just keep adding. The largest one I know is in Fort Bragg in North Carolina. It has 2 solids interceptors and 10 TrapZillas after it. They were originally instructed to put in by the local authority a conventional below ground grease trap that was similar in size to a conventional Olympic sized swimming pool. Seriously, and they were allowed to put in the 10 TrapZillas instead, saved them a fortune. Anyhow, again, this just different types of installations. Again, I'd like to draw your attention to the cleaning eyes and the venting that's in here in these. Okay, this hotel in London, again, they had a similar problem with the conventional below ground grease trap suffering from rust. Can I just remind you guys that the kitchen effluent is very harsh on concrete and steel, as it contains a lot of salt. It's almost like seawater. So you just need to be mindful of that. The TrapZilla is made of polyethylene, and in the majority of cases it will outlast the building that it's going into. But again, here we took out in this particular case, it was a 1,000 litre grease trap, and we put in the TrapZilla TZ 600 model. Again, here in this slide, we're showing that the TrapZilla has two vents. One is the hydraulic vent, air admittance valve, that goes on the outlet, and then on the left hand side you can see the carbon filter, which is the vessel vent, and this allows the unit to breathe. If the vessel vent is not fitted, then the TrapZilla will breathe through very small perforated holes that's on the lid. It will have to breathe as water goes up and down, and it's going to be a bit like a cylinder in a piston engine. As it goes up and down, it needs to move air. This was the first pump out that took place of this grease trap 1 month after installation.
Thermoco dates back to 1983, and we got involved in grease separators in 1985. In many cities, downtown areas, they had no room for the conventional type large concrete or metal grease traps to go, and they wanted more capacity. And that's when we brought out the TrapZilla. Since 2006, we have been perfecting the TrapZilla design. Now today's unit that's being evaluated is the pinnacle. We refer to this as our 3rd generation TrapZilla design. It uses the hallmarks of the horizontal baffle. It's got a number of subtle treatments that we do on the inlet and outlet baffle, and the overall tank design has been optimized to enhance separation and to have as much grease retention in as small a footprint as possible. Today's test is a rather strenuous test in that it's 100 gallons per minute, and it's using 160-degree hot water, and it's 20 pounds of grease, lard, at a time being administered in 200 gallons of water, batch after batch after batch. This is far more strenuous than would be seen in any restaurant.
Here are 2 stainless steel sinks, and they each hold 100 gallons of fluid. We will fill them up with water at 150 to 160 degrees F. After the water fills up the sink, we will also add lard. The lard is also preheated to the same 150 to 160 degrees F as the water, and because the sink partition is in here, we will add 10 pounds of grease here, 10 pounds of greased lard over here, and drop them in over about a 2-minute period of time. Total of 200 gallons, dropping in 2 minutes time gives us 100 gallons a minute, and that's the flow rate for the unit we're evaluating. During the test, all the water and some small amount of grease passes through the unit and goes into the skim tank. In order to determine what is retained in the unit, we have to determine what is not retained in the unit, and that's where skimming comes into play. The lower specific gravity grease rises to the top of the skim tank, and we use a long blade to corral any grease that has risen to the top over to a corner. We use a small pan to remove that material from one end of the tank. Pour that material into a separatory funnel where it further separates. We'll get a little bit more water out of it there, and then we pour it into a beaker and weigh it. And that gives us a weight for each drop cycle, a weight of the amount of the grease that goes through the unit. That gives us what it didn't hold, and we know what we put in to begin with, so the difference of those two gives you the amount of material that's held inside of the unit.
Now the weather. We're expecting an enormous amount of snow tonight.
We found out there was a winter storm rolling in on Wednesday evening, which, we thought about, the safety and the ability of our employees to get in. Because of that, we decided to start testing early on Tuesday evening.
I plan to be in the building, staying here, finishing the test, and have no idea if I'm going to get home tomorrow night because the roads may be totally impassable in our town.
We've determined that the TrapZilla model we're testing has passed the theoretical limit of a 750-gallon Interceptor, which is 1,381 pounds of grease retained. We did it. I think with that last drop, number 76 in this case, we have passed the 1,500-pound mark. Pretty awesome accomplishment.
Right now at the conditions on Highway 64 between Ashboro and Lexington, you can see a good amount of snow cover on the ground right now in this area.
Check on the outside and see how the snow's doing. We just had drop 91. About 6:35 in the morning. We've been going for almost 40 hours straight of testing. 92 successful drops.
92 flat separation curve drops.
That's right.
Averaging what, 99?
0.3% cumulative efficiency. I'd say this today was a huge success, completely exceeding our expectations.
It did.
The unit ultimately held 1,826 pounds of grease, which was well beyond my expectations, well beyond everybody's expectations.
It's great having a unit that over-delivers and gives people in a 250-gallon capacity, literally the equivalent of a 1,000-gallon concrete grease interceptor.
We were very proud of what we ended up with.
One of the goals here at Thermoco is to exceed our customers' expectations. We have a product, the product that stores multiple times the industry standard minimum requirement, 9 times the standard, plus has efficiencies that's up close to just below 100%. And really, it doesn't get much better than that.
Basically, what we're showing here is this particular truck is a 5,000 litre pumping truck, and with this we can pump out 13 TZ 600 TrapZillas, which is an equivalent to 2, maybe 3 1,500 litre grease traps. And it's basically what I'm demonstrating here is the efficiency of it and the carbon footprint that's involved. A lot of premises would be concerned with this, and so it's a huge saving to recommend the TrapZilla system. Okay, that's it for now. Please contact me with any questions. As I said earlier, there's no such thing as a stupid question, so just let me know what your question is by email, and I will help you out. If there's any particular projects you want to discuss, we can arrange a meeting and I can call to see you. Anyway, take care. Thank you very much.